We're often told that time heals everything, but that's not always true. Time cannot heal colonial crimes, for instance. Congo has not healed from the torture of Belgian rule. Let me tell you about the Congo story. Between 1885 and 1960, 10 million Congolese died, rather they were killed by Belgium's policies, be it through forced labor or famines. Belgium orchestrated human rights abuse of the worst kind in Congo, and Belgium is not sorry like Britain too. Belgium too has just regrets to offer for its colonial crimes. Listen to his speech, Philippe of Belgium, he said, and I quote, "On the occasion of my trip to Congo, right here, in front of the Congolese people and those who today are still suffering, I wish to reaffirm my deepest regrets for those past wounds." This is Belgium's King Philip. He was speaking during his first visit to Congo, and this is King Leopold II. He once ruled Belgium. This was between 1885 and 1908, from the day Leopold II came to power, he made Congo his personal property. Congo was turned into a labor camp. People were forced to grow rubber, and everyone was given a quota to meet. While the harvest made Leopold II richer, back in Congo, people's hands were cut off from not meeting their quota. If a family failed to produce enough natural rubber, the hands of women and children were cut off too. Those who resisted the atrocities had their feet cut off here too. Belgian troops did not spare women and children. Apparently chopping off limbs was Belgium's way of proving their superiority over the Congolese. Women were raped, tormented, and Leopold II oversaw these atrocities. When Belgian king died in 1909, a year before his death, Congo was transferred to the Belgian government. From a personal property, Congo became a colony, but its suffering and humiliation continued. Congo finally became independent in 1960, but Belgium did not let go of its colony easily. Belgium's then king delivered an address celebrating Leopold II, even calling him a genius in his following words, and I quote, "Congo's independence is the achievement of the work devised by the genius of King Leopold II. Congo is reaching the status on this day, the 30th of June 1960. When Congo elected its first prime minister, Belgian-backed secessionists assassinated him. In 2002, the Belgian government took partial responsibility for this assassination. Cut to 2022, many in Congo say, while they may be able to forgive Belgium for colonizing their country, the atrocities cannot be forgiven. Earlier this week, when King Philippe landed in Kinshasa, the people of Congo were expecting an apology, and rightly so. Here's one of the Congolese, and I quote, "As a Congolese, I can say welcome to the Democratic Republic of Congo, Your Majesty, but this time have the courage to say sorry to the Congolese people. The simple regret that you have expressed is not enough, because since the independent state of Congo, with the hands cut off, it is the Congo that bore the weight of 2 world wars for the benefit of Belgium." Philip did not apologize. King Leopold II was a brother of Philip's great-great-grandfather, which makes the lead not just a successor but also family. Philippe of Belgium again said, and I quote, "Let us write this new chapter together without forgetting the past, but by assuming it fully in order to transmit to the new generation." Well, that's the thing about colonial criminals. They hate accountability, be it Britain or Belgium. The mindset is the same. Not apologizing for past crimes is their way of bearing uncomfortable history. Do you know, Belgian colonial rule is not even taught properly in their own schools? Apparently, the country does not like to talk about its colonial. Last week, I have bad news for Belgium. People will hold Belgium accountable sooner rather or later. Remember, Leopold II's statue was one of the many symbols of hate that people defaced during the 2020 protests. People are revolting against attempts to whitewash history. Sooner rather than later, both Belgium and Britain will have to apologize for their colonial crimes. Any of you who doesn't know the story, let me tell you a short story about that in more detail. Congo, a colony built on forced labor and brutality. When the European powers got together to split Africa among themselves, in late 1884, a piece of the map was left out of the hands of all countries. In the center of the continent, the region of the Congo wouldn't be left to the Africans themselves, as it happened with Ethiopia and Liberia, the only regions which would remain independent, nor to the colonialist states. Instead, the huge area was recognized by the Berlin Conference as private property. It belonged solely and exclusively to King Leopold II of Belgium and would remain like that until the early 20th century. In the following years, the Congo Free State would not become known for this peculiar condition, but for another reason, much darker, the extreme brutality which the local population was treated by Leopold's henchmen in something that has been described by some historians as Africa's forgotten Holocaust. Civilization was at the core of Leopold II's pitch to European leaders in 1885 when they sliced up and allocated territories in what became known as the Scramble for Africa. He promised a humanitarian and philanthropic mission that would improve the lives of Africans. In return, European leaders gathered at the Berlin Conference and granted him 2 square kilometers, 770,000 square miles, to forge a personal colony where he was free to do as he liked. He called it Congo Free State. It quickly became a brutal, exploitative regime that relied on forced labor to cultivate and trade rubber, ivory, and minerals. In one, a man sits on a low platform looking at a dismembered small foot and small hand. They belonged to his 5-year-old daughter, who was later killed when her village did not produce sufficient rubber. She was not unique. Chopping off the limbs of enslaved Congolese was a routine form of retribution when Leopold II's quotas were not met. Colonial administrators also kidnapped orphan children from communities and transported them to child colonies to work or train as soldiers. Estimates suggest more than 50% died there. Killings, famine, and disease combined to cause the deaths of perhaps 10 million people, though historians dispute the true number. Leopold II may never have set foot there, but he poured the profits into Belgium and into his pockets. He built the Africa Museum in the grounds of his palace at Tervuren, with a human zoo in the grounds featuring 267 Congolese people as exhibits. But rumors of abuse began to circulate, and missionaries and British journalist Edmund Dean Morel exposed the regime. By 1908, Leopold II's rule was deemed so cruel that European leaders, themselves violently exploiting Africa, condemned it, and the Belgian parliament forced him to relinquish control of his fiefdom. Belgium took over the colony in 1908, and it was not until 1960 that the Republic of the Congo was established, after a fight for independence. When Leopold II died in 1909, he was buried to the sound of Belgians booing, but in the chaos of the early 20th century when World War I threatened to destroy Belgium, Leopold II's nephew King Albert I erected statues to remember the successes of years gone by. This makeover of Leopold's image produced an amnesia that persisted for decades.